I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to the final episode of Old's Oscar Countdown for the 2019 Oscar season. Here we are, we've been doing this for 5 months now at this point, breaking down all the categories, predicting what's going to get nominated. Now they've been nominated, now we're going to predict what's going to win. I've been keeping you updated for the past weeks, trying to keep this sort of incredible, sort of amazing Oscar race in the palm of your hand so you can predict which one is going where. And this is it. This is the final episode, except I will have a sort of a reactions video. This is going to be sort of the final predictions video before the Oscars, but if you want to know sort of my thoughts on how the Oscars went, Monday morning I'll be releasing an Oscars video, which is sort of just give a quick brief thing of my thoughts, and then also I'm also going to be continuing this channel. This channel is not going to be going away. I'm actually going to be doing an Oscar related series. Before, I've sort of looked at sort of film analysis, but now I'm going to be looking back every single week, and I'm going to be looking at Oscar movies that people sort of forget. Starting with 1989, I believe, or 1988, and then going there and working backwards. So seeing a lot of movies I've never even heard of. Why haven't they sort of stood the test of time? And looking at them, are they good movies? Because so many movies each year get nominated for the Oscars, but then they don't sort of stay in the film history sort of context. So I want to go back and really treat those movies with respect and see why they don't hold up today, or maybe they do and people just forgot about how great of a movie they are. That should be a lot of fun. As well, I'm continuing my Masters of Controlled Chaos series for fans of that series as well. So there's a lot coming after the Oscars, but I know why you're here. You're here for the Oscars, so I thought I might as well give you a little bit of a breakdown as to my predictions. I'm not going to leave you hanging with Best Picture or anything like that in an incredible, really interesting race. I say we just jump right into it. So, sit tight. There you go. Boom. Best Picture, Roma. Now, this is a popular pick. However, I've been predicting this for quite some time. I've been back and forth with, oh, maybe it's Green Book, maybe it's not. But ever since I saw Roma at TIFF, I thought there was a lot of buzz in terms of just how sort of masterpiece, the word masterpiece was thrown around, the critical reception was phenomenal, and how this sort of incredible, sort of confusing race, it's the only one that's actually had the most wins. It won BAFTA and it won DGA. Now, Green Book won PGA, yes, but it has controversy. Black Panther won SAG, yes, but it's missing director and editing and no acting nominations and no writing and blah, blah, blah. It's going to be really surprising something like Black Panther wins. And the favorite losing out with BAFTA sort of knocks it out. So really, it's between Green Book and Roma for me. But I think Roma actually has the edge. It actually has some sentimentality as well in terms of the emotional connection, but there's also support. Remember at the Oscars nominations, let's not forget my reactions video, right? It got 2 acting nominees when some people didn't think it was going to get any. It got both sounds. So this is a movie that people like. So overall, I still think with Alfonso maybe getting director, I could see this getting paired up with picture as well. I'm actually pretty confident in Roma, and during these past few weeks, I've really sort of been more confident in it, and after it won BAFTA, I was like, this is it for sure. I'm confident in Roma for the win, even in a sort of confusing Best Picture race. Best Actor, Rami Malek for Bohemian Rhapsody. This film is also sort of a hard one, not a hard one to predict, excuse me. Rami Malek has won SAG, he won BAFTA, he won the Globes. This is even, fans of the movie, people who don't like the movie, still think that, Rami Malek gives a really great performance. He does the transformation, he checks off all these Oscar boxes, he won the precursors. Rami Malek's pretty solid for a lock in Best Actor, with the potential upset being maybe Christian Bale for Vice or even Bradley Cooper. There is a lot of support for Bradley Cooper. Best Actress, Glenn Close for The Wife. I think this is actually closer than some people think, although I'm still going with Glenn Close because of that amazing Golden Globe speech. That's what people remember from that night. She also ended up winning the SAG Awards, which is the largest Academy branch sort of voting guild. And as well, you have to watch out for Olivia Colman for The Favourite, who just won BAFTA. There's a lot of support for her, and there's a lot of support for that film. But I think this is one of those overdue awards. The Christopher Plummers, the Still Alice for Julianne Moore. We see these every once in a while, and I think that Glenn Close for The Wife is pretty close to getting in for sure. Just because I think the momentum and the sort of American branch of the Academy will really push her over the edge, because she's been nominated 7 times and hasn't won. So I think she not only deserves it, but I think it's one of those overdue kind of awards. Best Supporting Actor, this one's pretty close to a lock too. Mahershala Ali for Green Book. I've heard a lot of great support for Richard E. Grant. I thought he was maybe going to win SAG, maybe win BAFTA, but when he lost both of those, I thought, it's Mahershala Ali's year to lose, pretty much. It's from a film, Green Book, that's really well liked, despite being the controversy. It still won at PGAs, and this is really the only award I'm actually going to give it. If it does not win Best Picture, I think that if they really want to reward Green Book, they're going to reward it in this category. However, don't be surprised with the Richard E. Grant for Can You Ever Forgive Me? Can You Ever Forgive Me? If you don't know, just won Best Adapted Screenplay at the Writers Guild. There's a lot of support for him, but Mahershala won SAG and Globes and BAFTA and a bunch of critics awards, so I think Mahershala's got this one in the bag. And for Best Supporting Actress, this is sort of one of the hardest big profile categories of the year. It could really go anywhere. There's not sort of a lot of tea leaves we can go off of. I'm going with Regina King, which is almost a heart pick. But here, let me explain my reasoning. If you don't know, Regina King wasn't nominated at the Screen Actors Guild Awards, and she was not nominated at BAFTA. So she won at the Globes, but she wasn't nominated at some of these industry awards. So you could say, maybe they don't like her. The film is not nominated for Best Picture. However, it did get Best Screenplay and Best Score. And some people actually think it's going to win, Best Adapted Screenplay. Some people actually think it's going to win Best Score. But for me, the sort of subjective factor of it, which is maybe my heart thinking, not my mind, you can argue that, but the subjective factor is that people like Regina King. I look at the Emmys. She just recently won 3 out of 4 Emmy nominations in the past few years. She's really risen as sort of a TV actress, but the lines between TV and film are sort of blurred nowadays. I also think that she's been in movies, Jerry Maguire. She's been in a lot of things for a long time. She's a well-respected actress in the industry, and when she gets nominated, she wins. People like her. This is, remember, a peer voting industry award. So in a confusing year, who are they going to vote for? They're going to vote for the person who they like. Now, the other potential spoiler, which I almost went with, is Rachel Weisz for The Favorite. No, now people are saying, oh, it's going to get vote split between Emma Stone. That's actually not the reason I'm going to predict, not predicting her. I don't think there's going to be any vote split at all. Yes, people like Emma Stone, there could be some vote splitting, some votes going her way. But remember, Rachel Weisz just won at the BAFTAs, and the SAG winner was Emily Blunt for A Quiet Place, which she's not nominated, so we can't sort of take that. But Rachel Weisz, she won at BAFTA. That's the only sort of industry precursor. This scenario sounds very familiar to, if you remember, with Sylvester Stallone in Creed. He won the Globes, wasn't nominated for SAG or BAFTA, lost to the BAFTA winner at the Oscars, which was Mark Rylance, whose film was nominated for Best Picture. However, Rachel Weisz has already won an Oscar. I think if she didn't win an Oscar, this would definitely be her category to win. The thing is that there's so much split vote because of the type of movie The Favorite is. You just sort of pick your own little person that you root for, and then that's the sort of character you connect with most. At least in my opinion, that's how I've sort of understood it. So it could be sort of a surprise for Rachel Weisz, but I also look at it for the overall general acting narrative. So if you take a look at some of the narratives that we've seen throughout the past few years, last year, let's take a look last year, for example. Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour, that's the actor who's overdue, right? And who was that this year? Glenn Close. Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri won 2 acting awards for Frances McDormand and Sam Rockwell. And Sam Rockwell was sort of a newcomer, sort of that guy, but he made an amazing performance, and they wanted to reward him. Frances McDormand won her 2nd Oscar because they really liked her. And who was the 2nd Oscar winner here? Mahershala Ali. Sam Rockwell, and then Allison Janney for I, Tonya, sort of the devilish kind of supporting actress. You could say that that goes to Rachel Weisz. But I'm even looking at previous years, and I'm thinking of things why I don't go with Rachel Weisz is because if I'm predicting Mahershala Ali to win for Green Book, that'll be a 2nd Oscar. So there's not many times actually in Oscar history where they award the 2nd Oscar or the 3rd Oscar to the same person in the same night. A lot of times they want to spread the wealth. They want to give it to Casey Affleck, the new winner. They want to give it to Emma Stone, the new winner. They want to give it to Gary Oldman, who's never won, and Sam Rockwell, who has an amazing performance and is a great actor. It's one of these. It's there's always sort of a veteran award that gives it. There's sort of one that sometimes gets the 2nd Oscar, but it is sort of rare. And I would be surprised if Mahershala Ali gets his 2nd Oscar and Rachel Weisz gets her 2nd Oscar. I think that should be a little surprising. I think Regina King is well respected within the industry. And then a dark horse, I think, is actually treat seriously is Marina de Tavira, just because there's the case that Regina King didn't get SAG or BAFTA. The Favorite girls split. Amy Adams did poorly, didn't win SAG, didn't win BAFTA. So Marina de Tavira in a movie from Roma that they love, if there's really a Roma sweep, we could see her get picked up in it as well. So watch out for Marina de Tavira. If you want sort of a 101 shot, that would be my prediction. But I'm still going with Regina King for Beale Street Could Talk. And then Best Director, this goes to Alfonso Cuarón for Roma. He won for DGA, he won at BAFTAs. Spike Lee could have that narrative, but Spike has he hasn't been sort of popular in the community because of sort of the nature of his films. They are abrasive in a lot of ways. And I think they're going to give Spike another award later on, so I'm pretty confident for Alfonso Cuarón for Best Director. Okay, now let's move over into the next category, which is starting to be a little more of the below the line, starting with Best Adapted Screenplay. Alright, so Best Adapted Screenplay, I'm going with BlacKkKlansman, like I said from the previous one. Spike Lee is nominated here. He's never won an Oscar before. I think that, he won at BAFTAs, which I thought, maybe Can You Ever Forgive Me might pull up the upset. If you don't know, Can You Ever Forgive Me won the Best Adapted Screenplay at the Writers Guild, which, makes it a little confusing, but I think that, if they want to give sort of Spike the Oscar, that narrative, they're going to give it to him for BlacKkKlansman. They're not going to give it to him for Best Director. It's a Best Picture nominee. It's probably the most likely. A Star is Born could win, if they want to give Bradley Cooper something, and Eric Roth. I think that's actually maybe a spoiler, but it doesn't have as flashy of a writing. It doesn't have the comedy and the sort of thriller aspects that BlacKkKlansman does. Can You Ever Forgive Me is about a writer, so you think that would win. I just don't think it has enough support. It could pull up a late last minute surprise, but I think that BAFTA win for BlacKkKlansman pretty much assures it for Best Adapted Screenplay. Best Original Screenplay, I'm going with The Favourite. This was really close with me. If you're predicting Best, Picture for Green Book, you're probably picking Screenplay here for Green Book. The problem I have with predicting Screenplay here for Green Book is I had it for a long time. However, he just recently lost to 8th grade at the WGA for Original Screenplay, of which The Favourite was not nominated. Also, it has controversy surrounded with it. Sometimes you have to realize the voting has already closed at this point by the time you're seeing this video. So you have to look at sort of previous week's main controversies. And what was the sort of big thing at the heat of the voting was Green Book and Nick Vallelonga, the screenwriter, one of the screenwriters, who sort of had some bad tweets that were pulled up recently. Then you also had Peter Farrelly, who has some sort of questionable behavior on sets, who is also a screenwriter. So I think actually the problem, so the controversy, who it affects, because that affects someone, I think, is Peter Farrelly and Nick Vallelonga, which would be the screenplay. Now you could say, well, no one listens to it, this is internet conversation. Yes, that is true. However, what you have to realize with Hollywood, the sort of attitude they go with is that they don't want to be sort of the odd ones out in a lot of ways. They sometimes like to go their own way, but they don't want to be sort of like, if everyone says this is bad, they'll go, okay, and they sort of follow the pack in a lot of ways. So if they're not reading sort of internet sort of controversy, at least I think there's enough controversy in terms of the actual accuracy of the film. Peter Farrelly, Nick Vallelonga, I think there's enough elements where you hear enough buzz where it's like, oh yes, it's a great movie, but has a little bit some bad stuff. You hear that sort of buzz, at least at the very least, throughout the industry, so you sway away. Plus something like The Favourite, I am actually concerned about it because this was actually a screen done by Deborah Davis, and then years later, I think like 10 years later, something 9 years later, Tony McNamara did a sort of a write-up on it. So there's sort of a conflict between the screenwriters, which we don't usually like to reward, but I think that The Favourite is definitely the most flashiest screenplay, has amazing dialogue. People really enjoy the movie as a whole. Won at BAFTAs. So it's actually, I think, more of an interesting race than some people are giving it credit for. I love to see a surprise for something like First Reform for Paul Schrader, but my bet right now is going for The Favourite because of that incredibly crisp, witty dialogue and sort of the comedy elements, the dark comedy elements that go with it. Best Cinematography, I'm going with Alfonso Cuarón for Roma. I probably shouldn't have put his name there because on the below the line categories, the names aren't on there. So the controversy is that historically, Roma, the best director, sort of the director who does their own cinematography or does their own editing, never wins. They sort of are inherently biased to that because the cinematographers don't want to lose their jobs in a lot of ways. So that's why the actual American Society of Cinematographers went with Cold War. Be in mind now that that guild is sort of a special guild in terms of it's not sort of, you can't like sign up, you have to be invited to it. It's sort of different than all the other guilds. It's a smaller guild as well, and they're a little bit more purist. That's why I think they went with Cold War, because it's by a cinematographer, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if Cold War won here, because that's sort of my theory. I don't know why I'm not choosing it here. Probably if I were to choose anywhere, it would be here. But Cold War got Best Director, right? It got Best Foreign Film. It got Best Cinematography. It has to win somewhere, right? I mean, it's hard for me to go with Roma for this example because I know there's got to be a Cold War win somewhere. But even a movie where at the BAFTAs, Cold War, they really liked Cold War. They even nominated for Best Screenplay. That being said, they didn't win. It didn't win any there. So my justification why I'm not doing any Cold War here is because it didn't win anything at the BAFTAs, despite being well loved at the BAFTAs. But you know, Amazon's definitely pushing for Cold War for cinematography, but I still think because there's no names on Below the Line, when it comes to the general body, the cinematographers may vote for Cold War, but the general body, I think they'll see Roma and that beautiful black and white cinematography. And it's really well shot and it's very striking visually. They'll go with Roma. Plus, they may not even know it's Alfonso Cuarón. They may think it's Emmanuel Lubezki because they've actually done Q&As together. Best film editing, this was another one I've been mulling over and not choosing hard, trying to choose what to pick. I just barely went with Vice because it's done by Hank Corwin, who's been nominated for a couple of other Oscars before. He's sort of not a veteran, but he's been around since Oliver Stone with the JFK days and Natural Born Killers, and he's done a lot. And he's sort of recently developed a style with Adam McKay with being The Big Short, and now with this docu-style kind of entertaining, fast-cut editing film. And I think out of all of the films, this has the most editing, and we see a lot of times that happens. With Dunkirk and Hacksaw Ridge. It also helps that I think, Vice is a movie that people like, but I'm not sure how many nominations how many wins it's going to get, just because I don't feel the love for it. That being said, it's still got a lot of nominations. It got 3 acting nominees. It got Best Director. It got Best Original Screenplay. It got Best Editing. I mean, it got in a lot of these categories. It has a lot of the sort of above the line support, definitely. So I think that they'll give it to Vice. However, watch out for Bohemian Rhapsody. The problem with this is that Vice won at BAFTA, but Bohemian Rhapsody won Best Drama at BAFTA, but Vice lost out to the favorite in Best Comedy for editing. So it's very confusing. I would say the next best pick is not the favorite. It's actually Bohemian Rhapsody, because it's done by John Ottman, who had to sort of take film from 2 directors and make something together, and that great sort of Live Aid sequence at the end is very energetic. I mean, it's really a close race between the two. I could go either way. I probably should be going Best Editing. This is sort of for Bohemian Rhapsody. However, I'm going to go with Vice just because in recent years, if we're looking at Whiplash or Hacksaw Ridge, they were the BAFTA winners and they ended up winning. For example, in the Hacksaw Ridge year, Hacksaw Ridge won BAFTA, and then La La Land won for Best Ace Eddies, and so did Arrival that year. So it was like a 3-way split. Similarly with Whiplash. Whiplash won BAFTA, and then I think the other 2, I forget the other 2, but I think it might have been Grand Budapest for comedy and something else, unfortunately, I forget for drama, but there was a 3-way split. So this is another sort of 3-way split. I'm going with the BAFTA winner. I'm going with Vice. Plus, it's also the one when I thought I was like, oh yeah, of course Vice, because it has the most editing in a lot of ways. So I'm going to sort of stick to my gut and my initial reactions for that. But watch out for Bohemian Rhapsody, because I think there's going to be a late sort of Bohemian Rhapsody surge. Best Animated Feature, this goes to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I've talked about before how I think Baby Incredibles 2 could get that sort of surprise win, because it's Pixar, and Pixar rarely loses when they get nominated. However, I think Spider-Man has sort of carried it. It got all those Annie Awards. It won at BAFTAs. It's just sort of the movie to win this year. It's just an amazing creative film. I'm really a fan of it, so I'm glad it will end up probably winning. But still, watch out. You never know. Best Documentary Free Solo. I recently changed this one, but it just makes a lot of sense because I think actually the buzz is going towards this. And you have to, for these documentary categories, any sort of buzz or any sort of interesting things that sort of goes with it, you have to go with it in that sort of flow. I used to go with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I used to say that before, even when I thought One Should Be My Neighbor or 3 Identical Strangers and movies like this would have gotten nominated. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG, is a standard sort of biopic documentary in a lot of senses. The biopic that was sort of live action on the basis of sex had sort of no traction, whereas Free Solo is really sort of going at it right now. Jimmy Chin and Elizabeth Vassell-Rae has been doing a lot of, the directors of the film have been doing a lot of interviews. The actual rock climber, Alex Honnold, has been doing a lot of interviews going around town. Also for people in LA and even in Toronto and places like that, Free Solo has been playing on IMAX theaters, so it's been in the theaters, it's been in the consciousness. You're seeing billboards, you're seeing people get interviews, you're seeing this guy around town, whereas RBG, you're sort of you're not seeing it as much. Plus, Free Solo just won at BAFTAs. Free Solo is the more entertaining, more cinematic documentary of them all, and I think it's going to go with Free Solo. Best costume design. This is going to be an interesting one. I think it's going to be Black Panther. I think this is kind of one of the upsets of the night, in a sense, at least the way I look at it, because The Favorite should win. It's an Oscar, 10-time nominated costume drama, well loved throughout the Academy. It's costumes. Sandy Powell, the costume designer, has also been nominated for Mary Poppins Returns. It's like, this is someone who they love. The difference is, Sandy Powell's won 3 times. They love her. They know her. Great. But the costume designer for Black Panther is Ruth E. Carter, and Ruth E. Carter just won a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Costume Designers Guild. So the costume designers right now are actually really, they like them. How they unfortunately, the way they do it, they split the votes, where they gave Black Panther sort of fantasy sci-fi. And then The Favorite, sort of the period piece, which makes sense. We haven't seen them sort of compete against each other in a lot of ways. Plus, you could say, BAFTAs really don't like this film. It only got 1 nomination, but it did win, or I think maybe 1 or 2 nominations, but it did win for visual effects at BAFTAs. I just don't think the Black Panther is a film that people really well like. They like it at SAG. It's got a huge American support base, which I think is definitely still strong, even despite it being an international Academy now. So I think Black Panther, with sort of a woman who's never won Best Costumes before, she's got a Lifetime Achievement Award. I think out of all the nominees, normally there's actually sort of a technical narrative in a lot of ways, where a guy who's been nominated like 20 times won sound mixing for Hacksaw Ridge. We see Roger Deakins for Best Cinematography. When there are sort of these technical narratives that are creating, and I think I've heard Ruth E. Carter's name more than I've ever heard before. She's the one that deserves it. An amazing sort of distinct Wakanda costumes, that Afrofuturism sort of blend. She does a great job in it, and I think it'll actually beat out the sort of traditional pick of The Favorite. However, I do think The Favorite will win Best Production Design. Why? Because I think the production designers and the Art Directors Guild, which also split between The Favorite and Black Panther, I think the art directors and the people in general prefer actual real life sets. I think actually the CGI, if you see even the behind the scenes documentaries, or you sort of understand it's a superhero film, there's a lot of CGI going on in Black Panther. So there's a lot of sort of digitally created effects, which would be visual effects and not actual production design. Whereas The Favorite has these very distinct locations. You have the sort of the courtyard, you have the long hallways, you have the bedroom of Queen Anne. I mean, there's actually distinct places that I remember. I think Mary Poppins Returns also has some distinct places, but I think The Favorite is just more of a well-liked film. And while they'll go their own way for costume design, I think it'll be an automatic pick for production design for The Favorite. I'm actually pretty confident in this one. Although I could see a scenario where The Favorite wins both, or Black Panther wins both. I should have maybe done for a smart pick, do The Favorite for both, but I don't do that. I go try to win all 24, because that's the way I am. Best Makeup and Hairstyling, I'm going with Vice. This should be a lock. It won 2 of the awards at the Makeup and Hairstyling Guild. Mary Queen of Scots also won, but Vice won 2, which is sort of a telltale sign in a lot of ways. It didn't win a BAFTA, which went to The Favorite, which was a bit surprising. So it's maybe not as a lock as you think, but The Favorite's not nominated for Best Makeup and Hairstyling here. Plus, we see a lot of these films like Darkest Hour, where the prosthetics of it all are really being celebrated. And like I said before, Christian Bale has been going around saying how amazing the makeup designers were. So was Adam McKay, just the brilliance of them all, and really just making them all transform all of the actors into sort of these real life people. Does an amazing job. Okay, now before we go into Best Score, we'll just take a quick break and then go into Best Score. Okay, Best Score, maybe I'm sort of having the Black Panther love, but I think that Black Panther will do well at the Oscars, at least for a couple of wins. And I think that this is maybe an award that people think will go to Beale Street Could Talk, or it could also go to Terrence Blanchard for Black Klansman. However, I've been predicting this for a while, and I still think it's going to be this. Ludwig Göransson actually was at the Grammys recently. He accepted a big award for Childish Gambino, who didn't show up. So at least he's in the consciousness of a lot of people. I think with its nomination for Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, for Best Original Song, I think it has the music in the film is clearly recognized and clearly well respected. Plus, you have an iconic sort of theme for T'Challa for the Black Panther that's recognizable. I also think that in a lot of years, I don't think it's going to be If Beale Street Could Talk, because in a lot of years it's either going to be this or Black Klansman, because I think I did a stat in the past 10 years, only 9 out of the 10 of them went to Best Picture winners, and only 1 of them went to the non-Best Picture, not Best Picture winners, but Best Picture nominees, and only 1 of them didn't go to a Best Picture nominee, which was The Hateful Eight for Ennio Morricone, who, if you don't know, did The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and it was a career award. So I don't think they're going to go with Nicholas Bertel Denzel for a career award because he hasn't done that. That would be sort of an off-the-beat sort of choice pick. I think they're going to go with a Best Picture nominee, which with most chances are probably going to be Black Panther. Could be Black Klansman. Just Black Klansman hasn't really won anything. It's been getting a lot of the nominations, but hasn't had the sort of undying, passionate love. And I think the sort of recognition of sound that Black Panther has, that if they don't give it one of the sound categories, and they don't give it for Best Song, I think they may just go that for Best Original Score. I think I'm more and more confident in this because of the stats I've looked at and sort of the unique analysis that you only get here at Old Oscar Countdown. All right. Best Original Song, this will go to Shallow for A Star Is Born. I could say, watch out for Black Panther, all the stars, but Kendrick Lamar and SZA aren't actually going to be performing at the show. Oscars voters didn't know that at the time. Which is actually disappointing. I mean, there's so much controversy with the Oscars in general, but I think The Shallow is so ingrained into the movie of the film. A Star Is Born got Best Picture. It got a lot of support throughout. I think that they're going to award it for something because I don't think it's going to get any other wins except for this. Although A Star Is Born has lost every single time except for this category, so you never know. I mean, they've really had sort of bad luck, but I still think for the songs, you got to go for A Star Is Born. All right, Best Sound Editing. I went on another limb. I've been saying this for a while before the Sound Editing Guild. This was going to be my surprise pick, but now everyone's seeming to choose it. Although this one's actually, I was almost tempted to do something else, but I still went with A Quiet Place. I still think because of its synonymous factor that it has support. It got Emily Blunt for a SAG. It got a bunch of sort of these Guild Awards. It actually won the big award at the Sound Editors Guild. So the sound editors like it. And I think when you're going through the nominations and you're actually thinking about them, even if you haven't seen the films or just thinking about sound editing and you're a general voter, you go, oh yeah, Quiet Place, of course, it has to do everything with sound. It's the loudest film, right? It's the quietest film, but it has distinct sounds. You remember those sounds. And I think that we'll look back on this and think, oh, of course A Quiet Place won. But watch out for Bohemian Rhapsody. It got 2 awards at the Sound Editors Guild where A Quiet Place only got 1, so they really appreciate this. So how they interworked on Freddie Mercury's dialogue in sort of the actual live aid sequence and the effects that they were able to create was very well done. And also First Man. I think First Man could be the main spoiler for me because it's the loudest film. They like space movies, and if it doesn't win visual effects, I still think they actually want to reward First Man. So they may go for sound editing here. Although this year I think that it actually might split. I don't think it might go to Bohemian Rhapsody, even though it got sound editing and got sound mixing and won Best Sound at the BAFTAs. That could all happen. But the sound, the sound categories people enjoy, and Bohemian Rhapsody is a movie they enjoy. But I still think it's going to go with A Quiet Place. That's my sort of upset. Best Sound Mixing, I'm going to go with Bohemian Rhapsody, like I said before, because it has sort of the musical sort of base films, which is the sound mixing categories are usually known for. It's either this or A Star Is Born, and this I think actually has more support. It also does a great job in weaving sort of Rami Malek's voice with Freddie Mercury's sort of amazing sort of singing voice. And I think that it also won Best Sound. So I think of the chances, Bohemian Rhapsody is more of a lock for Best Sound Mixing. I'm pretty confident in this one. It also won the Cinema Audio Society Awards, the Sound Mixing Guild. It won that guild for Best Sound Mixing. So yeah, that's pretty close to a lock. Best Visual Effects, which I'm sort of perplexed in a lot of ways that people are going with Avengers Infinity War, because yes, it did well at the VES Awards, which could be a sign that I could be wrong, but we've seen time and time again the Oscars going with the film, and the film that has maybe not the most visual effects, but is the most Best Picture like in the year of Interstellar, which beat out I think that might have beat out the first Planet of the Apes. Or beat out, essentially, that was a year where Interstellar won, similarly to Blade Runner last year. We use Blade Runner example. Blade Runner there was 5 movies nominated for Best Visual Effects, none of which were nominated for Best Picture. Blade Runner had the most nominations, therefore Blade Runner won. Interstellar, the same sort of situation. All 5 were not nominated for Best Picture. None of them were nominated for Best Picture. Interstellar had the most nominations and therefore won. I mean, even though the nominations for First Man are very similar in terms of sound editing, sound mixing, it got production design, Blade Runner got cinematography, and it also got Best Visual Effects. So I think that, while people are sort of interested in Avengers Infinity War, there's just too much against it. MCU film has never won before. Which probably will be changed this year with Black Panther. It's also a film that has only got 1 nomination. I think First Man just seems more Best Picture-like, although you never know. The Academy wasn't too fond of Best Picture the way some of the guilds were, or the way BAFTA was. Best Foreign Film, I'm going with Roma. It could be the same sort of situation with, excuse me, Cold War, where Cold War wins it here, and then Roma wins Best Picture, and that's sort of how they split it, because they do like Cold War. However, you know, that would seem like a very Oscars thing to do, and we look back at it and it's like, oh yeah, of course they did that. But I still think that Roma for Best Foreign Language Film should get in, because if Green Book does win, you know, they want to say, well, at least Roma got, you know, Best Foreign Film. They still want to cover their bases there because they're not so sure. I'm still going to go with Roma for Best Foreign Film. Although, you know, watch out. Best Animated Short, I'm going with Bao. I think I'm less confident than some of these other people. I think this surprise upset could be either Weekends, which is kind of a reflective animated short, or One Small Step, which is about a girl trying to become an astronaut, which is very sort of moving and sentimental. But this one's also moving and heartfelt. It's also done by Pixar, who actually hasn't been done that well in this category. You would think, oh, it's Pixar, so of course they're going to win. Actually, they've only won 3 times. Last year or 2 years ago, I think last year with Piper. No, that would have been 2 years ago, because last year was Dear Basketball. So 2 years ago with Piper, and then in 2002, I think was the last one. So they've only won twice, so this will be the 3rd win. However, I still think that they're not giving it to Incredibles 2, so they still like Pixar. They still want to award it with something, so they're going to give it with Bao. And that's sort of their Pixar love will go there. Best Documentary Short, I think it's actually more of a slam dunk than some people think. I saw this, and I saw Black Sheep, and I saw Endgame, and I think maybe Black Sheep's maybe my preference, and I think a lot of people may go with that because it's a very powerful, moving documentary. However, I think Period End of Sentence is a sort of feminist, that's political in a lot of ways, and feels timely and feels empowering and makes you want to do things. And I think from the sort of things I've heard is that people really enjoy this film, and I think this one is one that I would actually be maybe surprised. In the shorts, I'm never super confident in, but I'd be surprised if this one doesn't win. All right, Best Live Action Short. Once again, the shorts, so I'm not super confident on this, but I'm going with Marguerite just because I think a lot of the people watch all the shorts at once, and of the shorts, this is actually the most hopeful. I mean, it's a really dire sort of group of all of them, but this is at least hopeful, has sort of a little bit of empathy in a lot of ways, the way the others don't. I think Skin and Detainment and things like that have really harsh sort of messages, and they're really dark. But I think Marguerite, and when you're watching them all at once, Marguerite stands out and you remember Marguerite. Therefore, I'm going to go with that. And guys, that's it. Those are all of my nominations, all of my predictions. That's the last one. All 24 categories. Boy, oh boy, I was talking a mile a minute there, but I love the Oscars so much. Make sure to like below. Let me know some of your picks. Which ones am I going to go wrong? Tell me some possible upsets. I'd love to hear it in the comments down below. That's about it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And until next time, stay tuned.